So what is Twitter? If you don't know, Twitter is a social network, a microblogging platform that allows users to create and share posts of up to 140 characters of text, hyperlinks, images, or videos. Users create an account using whatever alias, name, or email address that they want to access the public timelines of others, and they can follow whomever they like. New users are directed to follow some very popular accounts according to their declared interests, but the site is eminently searchable as well by proper name or username, by keyword, or by hashtag. In addition, you can just simply click on the live feed of trending topics collected in the sidebar, or you can follow suggested tags or links put forth by big or popular accounts that you follow. Twitter allows for effective anonymity on its platform. And the network, unlike Facebook, supports non-reciprocal follows. Essentially, on Twitter, anybody can see anybody else's stuff and can contact them directly. These affordances of the software platform are its great strength, but they are also its great weakness. These affordances, anonymity, searchability, group formation, non-reciprocity of relationship, are what makes Twitter so vulnerable to pervasive structural rape culture. So what is rape culture on Twitter? Rape culture on Twitter, like everywhere else, is fundamentally about power. It's about who has the right to dominate bodies and conversations and culture, and how that domination shows itself in interactions that sexualize, humiliate, demean, terrorize, and, this is the crux if you're a John Hodgman follower, this is the crux, silence those who are not in the dominant group. On Twitter, if I share a link about pay equity and you reply me to shut up and make me a sandwich, bitch, which in fact sometimes happens to me, that's rape culture. It flags my status as woman and flags also that identity category as relegated to housework rather than to the public sphere, with a sexualized epithet thrown in and the power move of creating a direct relationship of my subservience to the man making the demand that I make a sandwich for him. This is a subtle example. I've got more obvious ones, but it's all on the continuum. So rape culture on Twitter, like everywhere else, is also intersectional. White women are subjected to and experience rape culture differently than trans people, or women of color, or queer people, for example. Me, I get asked to make like untold numbers of sandwiches, and I'm often told that I'm unfuckable, probably because I'm over 40 and I have a loud mouth. But only one person has ever threatened to have me deported back to a country where I will surely be kept violently in line by men of my culture. So there's that to consider. In our brief time together, then, we will consider a couple of examples of what rape culture on Twitter looks like and what its effects are on targeted users. Effects on perpetrators? Spoiler alert, there aren't any. So we'll look at how Twitter as an organization has kind of utterly failed to improve the situation that we can all see happening there. But then we'll end on a hopeful note. Tools to help, as they say, bitches get stuff done, and with fewer rapey annoyances. So, you ready for some terrible examples? Okay, just get the eye roll ready. All right. So, probably the example of rape culture on Twitter that you already know concerns the pimple on the ass of humanity known as Gamergate. Pause for laughter in my notes. The criminal harassment of game developers like Zoe Quinn and Brianna Wu, of feminist critics like Anita Sarkeesian, and anyone else who writes in public about so-called gamer culture in less than absolutely adulatory terms. I hope it will someday be possible to have a reasonable disagreement on intellectual grounds with someone without photoshopping their heads onto violent pornographic images, without bombing and dogpiling their mentions, without sending SWAT teams to their homes, without publishing all their personal details, without threatening to rape or murder their children. This last has happened to feminist writers Ann Theriault and Jessica Valenti. Apparently, when years of directly threatening to rape the women themselves did not achieve the desired effect of making them shut up, it was hoped that threatening their children would do so. It does. Rape culture on Twitter looks like this. Threats of sexual violence that are clearly 100% divorced from anything you might call flirting or asking for it, or mixed messages, and that have the direct aim of making the threatened woman shut up and go away at the very least, and become terrified for herself and her loved ones, perhaps as a bonus. It commingles sex and violence as a disciplining device. Otherwise, why would so many men propose to teach women a lesson by violently ramming various symbolic phallic objects into their bodies or into their children's bodies? It's not about sex. Let's just shake that off for a minute. Come on, everybody, shake it off. I don't want to live on that Twitter anymore. So, you can no doubt see, no you can't, it's a big podium. I'm wearing a Ghostbusters shirt. I'm all about Lady Ghostbusters, even if I had to buy my t-shirt from the men's section of Old Navy, because apparently they don't make lady swag for Ghostbusters. I'm particularly about showing love for Leslie J., who's had just about as bad a time as one can have on Twitter as a celebrity who happens to be black, as a celebrity who happens to be a woman, and starring in a reboot of a cherished dude bro funny movie from 1984. Of course there were howling mobs. As director Paul Feig explains it, quote, "I didn't realize that for certain older guys, the original Ghostbusters is the equivalent of a tree house that has the No Girls Allowed sign on it. And I think they look at me like the guy who came up, took the sign, lit it on fire, and then painted the treehouse pink." And so, right after the film's US release, a huge wave of racist, sexist, violent, and degrading venom sprayed out from Twitter all over actress Leslie Jones' timeline. Jones, who happens to be the only Ghostbuster in this film with an actual Twitter presence, became the victim of an internet dogpile of several thousand suddenly really angry men. Seemingly from out of nowhere, her mentions became nothing but deeply offensive racist image macros, crude personal insults, threats of violence, heaps and heaps and heaps of sexist and rapey invective. Jones fruitlessly played what I call block-a-troll whack-a-mole for an entire day before declaring emotional and psychic exhaustion and logging off. But here's the twist on that story. It turns out that the goal of the dogpile was to get its organizer and instigator, the Breitbart writer and uber-conservative gadfly Milo Yiannopoulos, banned from Twitter, so that he could get more famous and have more fodder for his preferred narrative of political correctness run amok and free speech under peril, earning himself higher speaking fees and more invitations. So this incredible attack on Jones wasn't even about Jones at all, nor even about Ghostbusters. The attacks were spurred to get maximum attention for Yiannopoulos, and that's why they targeted Jones, because she had a big following and an active presence and a new movie that was getting lots of press. It could hardly be more clear that this is about power. Yiannopoulos launched a violent mob attack against Jones in hopes of leveraging the wide coverage of her pain and humiliation to get himself more famous. Chew on that for a while. This is the commercialization of rape culture on Twitter. So Twitter users are the problem. Twitter's vibe and demographics are weird. It's like the swamps of 4chan mixed with YouTube makeup tutorials, crossed with Reddit's information collation techniques, leavened by parody and comedy writing, but also celebrities next door to massive and organized but diffuse social justice movements, and also news organizations and brands. Promoted tweet. Also maybe your teenage sister, but probably not your mom unless she's a PR professional. So this wide range of power user groups or sets of users online in the context of a wide open network that supports anonymity and prizes free speech means that all-out battles between groups frequently flare up. Indeed, so-called alt-right activists, so-called men's rights activists, and self-described trolls who are in it for the lulz take active joy in spurring just such wars on Twitter. Much of this is directed towards women, and of course to otherwise marginalized and intersectional identities. Havoc takes the form of derailing, harassment, and threats in a nearly consequence-free environment. Favorite techniques for harassment bear the hallmarks of rape culture in their tendency towards sexualization, objectification, violence, and silencing. Called out on this behavior, most users who engage in it make immediate calls to the ideals of free speech above all and personal freedom. Regardless of whether reasonable observers find such arguments compelling, they don't. The point is moot, as there are nearly no enforceable or meaningful sanctions or consequences for telling, for example, a woman who advocates for LGBTQIA marriage rights that you will hate fuck some sense into her. The onus is placed on the harassed user to block, mute, and report. A further injury that places the burden of proof and all the efforts and labor of that proof onto the victims of abuse, just like in real life. Banned users, and it's really, really hard to get banned from Twitter, almost always reappear immediately with new accounts. So Twitter is big enough that this strategy of users policing other users individually is just never going to work. So what is Twitter itself doing? Well, Twitter is part of the problem. Surprise. Rape culture is baked right into how Twitter is designed and built, and in the cultures of use that have developed as a result of those design decisions, affordances, and company policies. Rape culture on Twitter is continually reinforced by the way the system is maintained, by Twitter's nearly constant and seemingly deliberate failures to both understand the problem and to implement solutions. Look, Twitter is 10 years old. They should have this under control by now. And they keep saying they're trying, but everything they roll out doesn't work. Audrey Waters has rightfully noted that platforms that don't take equity, justice, and safety into account at the initial design and launch stage are always going to have a hard time reverse engineering for those later. And the reason they don't take it into account first, I propose to you, is because tech development is remarkably the preserve of privileged young white men in California who literally don't have to think about these things. The Twitter executive team has more guys named Adam than it does women. That would be a 2-to-1 ratio of Adams to ladies. The Twitter board of directors has more guys named Peter on it than women. Again, that would be 2 Peters for every lady person. It's hard to imagine a more homogeneous set of people around a table, people who've never had their breakfast interrupted by a pinging notification advising them that they are a stupid feminist cunt who deserves to be killed, for example. Twitter as an organization is baldly homogeneous, and this reflects their early demographics and use conditions, really popular with certain very homogeneous tech in-crowds in Silicon Valley. Early Twitter thus paid very, very little attention or thought to questions of user safety or community standards of discourse and behavior, just not thinking at all about rhetorics of sexualized violence, not even imagining the real fears of vulnerable users. And as they have grown into a more financially mature company, seeking constant user number expansion, new and secure revenue streams, they find themselves trapped here in this weird libertarian, free speech above all, Silicon Valley tech culture mindset, terrified of bad publicity, but more terrified of angry dude bro mobs claiming their rights are being infringed. And once more, the safety of vulnerable users is disregarded. Block someone if you want, but good luck getting them banned, and there's no way to prevent them from coming back. There's too much money at stake now to tackle these kinds of issues that don't even seem to be about the most valued kinds of users. Thanks, capitalist patriarchy. So, to end on a hopeful note, I suggest to you tools like the Blockbot and the Gamergate autoblocker, GG Autoblock, and also if you follow Randy Lee Harper, she has this great bot that engages trolls and draws them into soul-sucking arguments using auto-generated lists of keywords that don't make sense, and it's amazing how long people will argue with those before they give up and go away. And if you find yourself under attack, I suggest to you the new website Trollbusters. Trollbusters that aims to bomb your mentions with positive stuff if you find yourself under attack. So if Twitter can't solve this, maybe we can solve it for ourselves. Thank you very much.